Welcome to DCEB Suryapeta YouTube channel, Khammam and Suryapeta districts. Welcome to online 10th class online classes social studies. This is Vadde Chandrasekhar, working as school assistant at GHS CPS Madira. So today we are going to learn a new lesson from 10th class social studies, that is social movements in our times. Okay. So in today's class we will discuss about some important topics. So these are the subtopics: civil rights and other movements of 1960s, and human rights movements in the USSR, anti-nuclear and anti-war movements. These are the subtopics of today's class. Okay, children, listen carefully. So, learning outcomes of today's class. The student explains about civil rights movement and other movements of 1960s. So, what are the movements happened in 1960s time? So, the student can explain. The second one is the student explains about the famous speech of Martin Luther King Jr. So, he has given a wonderful famous speech. I have a dream. So, the student can explains about the speech. The third one, the student explains about the human rights movements in the USSR. So, what are the reasons and why the human rights movements happen in USSR only? Like that, the student can explain each and every point of human rights movements of USSR. And the fourth one is the student explains about anti-nuclear and anti-war movements. So, why the movements started against anti-nuclear weapons and anti-war movements? Why the people protested against these nuclear weapons and wars? So these are the learning outcomes of today's class. So I think by listening our class, every student can explain these learning outcomes. So first, the background. Our lesson is social movements in our times. So in present times, what are the movements happened social movements? So what is the background to the social movements? Why the social movement started? So these are what are the reasons behind the social movements? Why the people revolted against the present system? So here, during the first half of the 20th century, it means 1950s afterwards. Okay, 1900 to 1950s up to first half of the 20th century. The world was dominated by great wars. So we experienced in the history two great world wars are there. First World War and Second World War from 1914 to 1918 and 1939 to 1945. In the first half of the 20th century, we experienced huge human loss and property loss also. So major revolutions also happened in the first half of the 20th century. Emergence of German and fascism, Nazism in Germany and fascism in Italy, and socialism raised in Soviet Union, USSR, and Western liberalism and national liberalism movements are happened in the first half of the centuries. So then, after Second World War, so many colonies like India, China, Sri Lanka, so many African countries, they got independence from Western powers. Okay, this was an era of economic growth and prosperity for most of the countries. So this is the first half of the centuries era for economic growth. The newly independent countries, they started their developmental processes and their developmental activities. That's why this is an era of economic growth and prosperity. So in other side, growing tensions in many countries. So in one side, newly independent countries are there. They are in busy with developmental activities and they have so many problems after independence. They are trying to solve those problems. But in another side, growing tensions between world powers like USA, USSR, and developed countries and colonial countries. So this is this is the period of growing tensions between developed countries. Some sections of societies which had long been denied equal rights came out asserting their rights. So here, this is a major cause. From long back to so many sections of the society, so many sections of the people, they denied from equal rights, and in so many aspects they denied from other people, and they are discriminating from other people, from other sections of the people in the society in so many countries. So this is the major reason for the starting of social movements. So the discriminated people, they started revolting or protesting against the other sections of the people. Why should we discriminated? Why won't we get equal rights along with the other sections of the people? What is the reason? Why won't we get equal rights and equal freedom or freedom of speech or freedom of movement like this? They want to get all these rights. That's why to get all these rights, they started social movements in different countries. So this is a background of social movements in our times. So the famous civil rights movement was started in America in 1960s. So this is the American civil rights movement. This is a famous civil rights movement, and it's a very inspiration to the other social movements in other countries also, in other continents. So here in American, if you observe the history of America, here two types of people are there majorly, blacks and whites. Okay, at the time of colonialism, the Western powers they brought slaves from Africa, particularly in African continent, particularly in southern African countries and coastal African countries. So they brought so many people as slaves, and they sold in American markets. And black people also increased in number in America. So they started asking for their rights. So here is a basic reason for civil rights movement in America. So discrimination, there is a discrimination between blacks and whites. So the black people who are discriminating from all types of facilities or opportunities like this, they started a movement against white people. So fought for equal treatment of Afro-Americans. So Afro-American means the people, the American people who have origin in Africa. So against segregation of blacks and whites in schools, buses, in public places, hospitals, in so many places, they are discriminated. Okay, discriminated against them in appointments also, in housing, and even voting rights also. The black people, they don't have voting rights along with the white people. So these are the demands of black people. They don't want to segregate themselves from these different types of opportunities. It is a largely non-violent movement. So the black people, they started civil rights movement. It's particularly is a non-violent people. So in this movement, they have followed so many different types of protest, forms of protest. One is a massive demonstrations. Massive demonstration, the large number of people demonstrated in the streets. Okay, marches also. Civil disobedience and boycott of discriminatory services. So here in the bus, for example, if you take a schools and buses and public places, they discriminated from whites. So in the buses, they have two types of sections in the bus, and one section for whites and one section for buses. So these people, the blacks, they started boycott of discriminatory services like buses, schools, and public places. Year-long boycott of buses by blacks in Montgomery state, okay, led by Dr. Martin Luther King, caused huge loss to the Montgomery bus company. Okay, finally, the court banned the segregation of seats in 1956. So finally, after the year-long back boycott of buses by blacks, the Montgomery bus company has got huge losses. Finally, the court banned the segregation of seats in 1956. Another movement against segregation in the schools. So in the schools also, separate benches for whites and blacks and separate classrooms for whites and blacks. They are following like that. So this is also boycotted by black people. Okay, finally, 20th August 1963, they marched they conducted a famous march in Washington DC. It's the capital of America. So that is famously known as Washington March. That was happened in 20th August 1963. Nearly 2 lakh people marched and demanding a passage of Civil Rights Act, which gives equal rights to the blacks and whites. This is a famous Washington March. So here you can you can observe the people Elizabeth Eckford on a black girl in 1957 September 4th in Little Rock School. So in schools also they separated separate benches. Segregation is going on between blacks and whites. So in the famous Washington March, they have demanded the government. So these are the demands. First one is a program for generation of employment. So they demanded for the employment generation for blacks also. So at the same time, full and fair employment. So they also need demanded for full and fair employment, and there is no discrimination in the employment or wages also. Decent housing along with the white people, they demanded for decent housing also. There is no discrimination between, they don't want any discrimination between whites and blacks. And the most important right is the right to vote. If they have right to vote, automatically they will get all the facilities along with the white people also. So they demanded for right to vote. Adequately integrated education system. So here up to then they therefore the American government is following a separate education system, but the Washington March they demanded integrated education system along with where there is a facility to learn education along with the whites. So there is no separation between whites and blacks. So that is nothing but integrated education system. As the movement grew in strength, several viewpoints emerged. So here many people agreed with Dr. Martin Luther King. So possible to achieve equality for all. So after seeing the Washington March, the successful March of Washington, so they came to know it is possible to give equality for all. And at the same time, here another discrimination raised in the Washington March, that is black women. They participated very actively in large number, but in Washington March, famous Washington March, there is they didn't give chance to speak for women. Okay, women didn't get any chance to speak on Washington March dash. Okay, here they are fighting for the abolition of discrimination, but at the same time they are following a discrimination between black women and black men. Okay, women felt that movement was dominated by men only. No woman is allowed to speak in famous Washington March. Okay, so women they demanded for equality along with the men. Okay, this is also another demand. So here in the picture you can observe Martin Luther King Jr. is a famous leader who raised in Washington March. Okay, so here he gave a world famous speech, that is I have a dream. So in his speech, okay, once we read the speech. So in American history, Abraham Lincoln abolished slavery and slave practices. But even though he abolished slavery, but they are following discrimination between whites and blacks. In his famous speech, the last 4 lines are most important. So I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So, children, listen carefully. Once again, I am reading the 4 lines. So, what is the main demand or main wish of Martin Luther King? I have a dream that my 4 children, little children, will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So here in his speech, he has 4 children. Okay, what is the main wish of Martin Luther King? He wants to live in a nation where the people will not be judged by the color. Okay, here in the major discrimination in America is based on the color, black people and white people. Okay, based on color. That's why he doesn't want to live in the country where the discrimination is going on based on the color. So he wants to live in a nation where they won't follow the color discrimination and they judge the people based on the talent or content of their character. So this is the main wish of Martin Luther King. This speech is a world famous speech. Okay, I have the name of the speech is I have a dream. Okay, children. So here up to now we have discussed about the civil rights movement in America, USA. Now we are going to learn about human rights movement in USSR. Okay, children, why human rights movement started in USSR? In those days, the USSR had government which did not allow. So in the USSR, so there is a government which did not allow people for free multi-party elections. There is no chance to multi-party elections and free uncensored press or media. So the government censored press and media, and they controlled news, what to telecast and what to publish or what to print in the print media and electronic media. So every news should be censored by the government. Even freedom of expression and movement for ordinary people. So the ordinary people, they don't have any freedom of expression. They cannot express their views and opinions freely. There is no chance. At the same time, they cannot move from one place to another place freely. So these are censorship or control on freedom of expression and a movement of ordinary people. At the same time, government always think fear of conspiracies to establish them and kept a close control over all activities of the people. So always the governments were constant under the fear of conspiracies to establish them. So that's why they watched closely each and every citizen of the people, and they control all activities of the people to protect their power. They continuously they want to be in seat, so they continuously they want to continue the government. That's why they closely watch all the citizens. So here they are violating the freedom of individual right, freedom of individual freedom, right of individual freedom. Then many movements took place in many parts of USSR and Eastern Europe, where the communist ideology is going on near USSR and Eastern Europe, where the influence of USSR is going on. So movement started for human rights, movement started for freedom of expression, movement started for free press and free movement. Okay, so the people started revolting against the governments for human rights and for freedom of expression freely. They want to express their opinion and they want to move from one place to another place freely, and they need a free press. What is happening in the country, they want to know as it is without any censor. That is a major demand. That's why based on these demands, the people started movements. In countries like Hungary, Czechoslovakia and Poland, this also took the form of demand for freedom from the control of USSR over them. So now only we discussed on Eastern Europe, particularly in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, so many countries, they are controlled by USSR and ideology of the USSR. So the people who are living in Hungary, particularly in Czechoslovakia, Poland, the people, they have another demand, that is they want to freedom from USSR control. Okay, they want to free from the control of USSR. So these are the demands of USSR. Okay, so why the people started movements? So the people, they didn't have any rights, they didn't have any freedom to express or movement. That's why the people started a human rights movement in USSR. These are the reasons and these are the demands for the human rights movements in the USSR. Okay, so at the same time, the movements which started in USSR, they got support from anti-communist countries like USA and UK. So USSR, United Soviet Socialist Russia, is a communist country. So the communism ideology is going on, and the government is going on the ideology of communism. Okay, but the anti-communist countries are there, capitalist countries like UK, US. These are the anti-communist and the capitalist countries. So they gave support to the social movements which are started in Russia, because they are against to the Russia. Okay, different shades are there in these movements. Okay, different shades, different types of forms are there in the movements. Some for greater freedom for common people. So in some moments they demanded for greater freedom for common people. In some moments they sought to dismantle the socialist system. Okay, they don't want to continue socialist system. They want to dismantle the socialist system, and they want to establish another type of system, that is a capitalist system, maybe. Okay, here for this another type of movement, Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, the famous writer, and the Andrei Sakharov, the nuclear scientist, these are the important leaders. They led the movements which are started in USSR with the help of other anti-communist countries like USA and UK. Next, new leadership emerged in USSR. Here, President Mikhail Gorbachev, who initiated a process of reform called Glasnost to bring greater freedom for the people. So here, because of these human rights movement started in USSR, different shades of movements, they pressurized the governments to give to fulfill their demands. So because of the pressures which are coming from the different types of movements, finally the president of USSR, they started a process of reform that is called as a glasnost. Okay, the form of reform is called as glasnost. The meaning of glasnost is bring greater freedom for the people. So glasnost means is a giving more transparency in the government activities. So up to then there is no transparency in the government activities. Always they are following censorship, but the reform called, the process of reform called Glasnost gives more transparency to the government activities and the government ideology and the government activities. So Gorbachev initiated the process of reform. Okay, children. So it's a first step to giving freedom to the people and giving human rights to the people. This is a first initial step which is taken by the Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev is the president of USSR. So here we can see the Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn is a writer, a socialist writer. He started, and Andrei Sakharov is a nuclear scientist. Both are led social movements in USSR. So here Mikhail Gorbachev is a president of USSR who introduced glasnost process, which gives more freedom to the people and which gives more transparency in the government activities and government policies implementation. Okay, Mikhail Gorbachev. So another movements, anti-nuclear and anti-war movements. So here, why the people revolted against anti-nuclear and anti-war movements, and why they protested, why they started the movements against the nuclear and the war movements? Because in 1970s and 80s saw a new kind of movement, that is a movement against war and nuclear arms. Okay, already we experienced 2 world wars. We damaged we got a huge loss because of First World War and Second World War, and so many countries they damaged because of wars. But again, the people, they don't want another Third World War. That's why they started movements against wars. At the same time, the countries, the superpowers like America, UK, France, Russia, these superpower countries, they started usage increasing of nuclear arms. Okay, so another reason for anti-nuclear and anti-war movements is the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 in Second World War. To control Japan, America tested 2 nuclear bombs on USA dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. Because of these nuclear bombs which dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japan lost very much and damaged so much. Hiroshima and Nagasaki totally collapsed 2 cities. Okay, so after seeing the damage of nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the people all over the world, they started movements against anti-nuclear and anti-war movements. Superpowers like USA, USSR, Britain, France, they began building arsenals of nuclear weapons. Okay, they started industrial complexes to produce more nuclear weapons. So they tried to justify why, and all the countries, the superpowers, they try to justify why they are establishing arsenals of nuclear weapons to protect from other countries. They are trying to justify them as a means of deterring the other powers from using them. Okay, for the protection, for our self protection, we have to produce more nuclear weapons. If any country will drop a nuclear weapon on our country, we have to protect ourselves to control from other countries. Like that, the superpowers trying to justify. Okay, those were Cold War days and America's war with Vietnam. So after completion of Second World War, the world come into the Cold War days. That is a between what do you mean by Cold War? Cold War means this is an indirect war without using weapons, by using different types of other methods like words, they giving us speeches like that. It's a tension situation between USSR and America, USA. So this is a war-like situation, but it is not direct war. It is a war. It is a war-like situation. Indirectly, they are trying to control other countries, other group, USA group and USSR group. These are Cold War days, and at the same time, in Vietnam, communist type of government formed. So again, is a communist ideology. America entered into the Vietnam to control the communist groups. So it is a totally America's fault in entering into Vietnam. It is very far from America, but Vietnam is a small country, but America wants to control Vietnam, and particularly communist. Okay, America wants to control the influence of USSR in Vietnam, and that's why America continued war for so long time. Okay, entire world the fear of another world war. So in this situation, the entire world, the people warring all over the world, they felt that their fear of another world war, third world war may come, like that. So many people they are afraid. At that time, scientists and intellectuals campaigned for abolishing all nuclear weapons. Okay, the famous scientists and intellectuals all over the world, they started a protest against abolishing of all nuclear weapons who produce in superpowers. Insisted USA and USSR come to an agreement. Okay, the intellectuals and scientists, they insisted USA government and USSR government to come to an agreement to control nuclear weapons. Okay, finally, based on the pressures which are coming from the different types of movements all over the world, the people, the USA and USSR, finally they agreed to an agreement. Okay, here in the picture you can observe the dropping of nuclear bomb on Nagasaki. Okay, so here if you observe that here two pictures are there, same area, but two pictures before nuclear bombing and after nuclear bombing, dropping of nuclear bomb in Nagasaki. So these are before dropping of nuclear bomb, after dropping a nuclear bomb. So you can observe the difference. So huge damage happened in Nagasaki, totally collapsed by a nuclear weapon. Okay, here is a Vietnam, where America entered into war to control the communist. So because of Vietnam war, some facts are there. So estimated nearly 8 million to 30 million Vietnamese military and civilians killed, apart from large number of Cambodians and Laotians also uh, lost their lives. So Cambodia and Laos, they have adjacent countries. They have borders with Vietnam. So USA did not see any civilians deaths, but a large number of military personnel died and handicapped. Okay, but the USA is very far from Vietnam. That's why there is no loss to civilians who lived in USA, but huge deaths, a large number of military personnel died who directly participate in the Vietnam War, and so many number of people, thousands of people, they physically handicapped because of the war damage. Okay, Vietnam was a poor country in comparison with the US and France. So Vietnam is a small country compared to USA, and is a very poor country. But the superpowers like USA and France, they tried to control. But the Vietnamese people and the army, they fought very bravely to control the USA. Okay, Vietnam is using guerrilla warfare techniques. Okay, so they cannot fight directly with America and France military. That's why the Vietnamese, they use the guerrilla warfare. It is suddenly they attacked on the USA forces. So that is a guerrilla technique. So USA invented and used newer arsenals like chemical weapons, including napalm bombs, and destroying complete villages. So here to control the Vietnam, the USA they fight illegally also. They used chemical bombs also, chemical weapons also. So like a napalm bomb. Okay, the aeroplane of USA is dropping a napalm bomb. So during 1970s, more American soldiers returned from Vietnam War against bombing on innocent people. The Vietnamese are innocent people, but the America, to show it's a superpower, it is continuing a war and dropping different types of weapons on Vietnam. So because of war, Vietnam war, so many innocent, lakhs of innocent people died. So yeah, it is very heart touching. That's why some of the American soldiers they returned from Vietnam war to their native country, and they rejected to participate in the war also. More and more Americans were also unhappy about sending their children to war in distant Vietnam. And the parents of soldiers of USA, they also they don't want to send their children to the Vietnam war and to the Vietnam. So here is a famous news article is there, which we won't go. So the parents of soldiers, USA soldiers, they don't want to send their children. We won't go to Vietnam. So America is doing a war on innocent people. We don't want to continue war. So here the patriots of America, they see the fault in soldiers who rejected to go Vietnam. At the same time, who are peace lovers and who give more importance to freedom, they appreciated the soldiers who rejected go to Vietnam. So here, two different ideologies are there. Okay, discuss, children. Discuss the about on this. We won't go on this statement. Discuss uh, on 2 points of view in the class and write a short note of arguments of both sides and your own viewpoint. Okay, children. Then here the people who they are protesting and they are rejecting to go to Vietnam war. Okay, so here, massive protests swept across America against the Vietnam War. This eventually forced US government to end the war and leave Vietnam. Okay, so pressures are increasing in America. The people, the common people, they started movements against American government to leave from the Vietnam War. So the success of this campaign inspired peace movements also. So because of these peace movements all over world, other people, other sections of the people also they started peace movements. So arms race intensified after Vietnam War, and they established so many nuclear complexes to produce more bombs and more new type of new chemical bombs and nuclear bombs like that. So to get more funds from the people, they try to create a war panic among the common people. So there is a war in front of us. So we have to protect ourselves. We have to produce more weapons. For that, we need more money. For that, we are imposing more taxes. The people, the common people, should cooperate to us. Like that, they are trying to create war panic among the common people to get support. So arms race made the world more unsafe. Massive protests took place to reduce nuclear arms and work towards peace. Finally, USA and USSR they come to an agreement, that is a SALT agreement, that is strategic arms limitation talks, but it is very unsuccessful. After SALT agreement again in 1991, another USA and USSR they signed on another agreement, that is a START. START means START, START, Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. Okay, signed by USA and USSR. So if you observe this picture, we can understand the Arsenal's race, arms race between America and USA. Okay, so when we are going to, in up to 2005, how the number of weapons increased. Okay, we can understand how drastically the American is funded for producing of new weapons. Okay, START negotiated the largest and most complex arms continued. So 80% of all strategic nuclear weapons they have to control up to 2001. The final implementation happened in 2001. So the USSR was dissolved and in its place a new Russian state was formed. In 1991, USSR collapsed and formed a new Russia, and some of the countries liberated from USSR, they come out from USSR Union. Okay, because of dissolving of USSR, Cold War tensions ended with this incident, but not the end of war or violence between countries, as we have witnessed the disastrous wars in Eastern Europe, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Okay, Cold War tensions ended, but other types of tensions or war situations happened in Eastern Europe and Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, major accident took place in USSR nuclear plant in Chernobyl, caused death of large number of workers. Okay, a nuclear plant is there in USSR, Chernobyl nuclear plant. A huge accident happened in Chernobyl nuclear plant. Because of that accident, large number of workers died in that accident. So this is a incident which gives more boosting to the peace lovers and who wants who started anti-nuclear movements and anti-war movements. Okay, contamination of atmosphere in larger area because of release of nuclear gases. It helped to merge anti-war concerns with the concerns of environmental protection. Okay, children, because of this incident, the people came to know what will happen if any damage will happen to the nuclear plant in future. The total damage to the atmosphere, land, soil or water, and all types of pollution will be created in future. It is huge loss to the human life. That's why the people they started more movements after this incident also. Okay, so children, up to now we have discussed about civil rights movement in America and human rights movement in USSR and anti-nuclear and anti-war movements. So now I will try to recapture the lesson. Okay, American civil rights movement was the most important movement in the world. So it is an inspiration to the all movements all over the world who are trying to get freedom and rights and who love peace. Okay, discrimination between blacks and whites in all the areas. So civil rights movement started again is the discrimination between blacks and whites. They followed civil disobedience. Okay, different types of forms of protests are they followed in civil rights movement like demonstration, marches, disobedience, and avoiding of usage of discriminating services, buses, hospitals, and like public places. They marched a famous Washington March. They conducted a famous Washington March. In that Washington March, Martin Luther King Jr. he gave a famous world famous speech. I have a dream. Okay, human rights movement started in USSR against the censorship on press and censorship on freedom of speech and freedom of movement, and at the same time they don't have any rights, and always the governments controlling try to control the people in each and every activity of the people. So they started human rights movements in USSR. So Gorbachev initiated a process of reform called glasnost. Okay, because of the human rights pressures in USSR, finally the president of USSR, Gorbachev, initiated a process that called as a glasnost. It's giving more transparency to the government policies and government activities, and it is giving more freedom to the people. It is a initial step which is taken by Gorbachev, USSR president. Okay, 1970s and 80s, another type of movement started, that is anti-nuclear and anti-war movements they started. So after seeing of damage of World War II and World War One, the people or scientists and intellectuals they started anti-war and anti-nuclear movements. So particularly after Vietnam War, they it is a Vietnam War is an example for the loss caused by war. And after Vietnam War, the competition between superpowers in arena arms race is increased very much. And because of arms war, the governments try to get justifying their investment on investment on weapons. For that, for the justification, they try to create a war panic situation among the common people to get more to collect more taxes from the people to invest more on arsenals nuclear weapons. Here, because of the pressures which are coming all over the world and different types of from all over world, different types of movements, finally USSR and USA come to an agreement, that is SALT agreement, but it is very unsuccessful. uh, in 1991 another agreement, they signed on another agreement, that is a strategic arms reduction treaty, and finally it implemented in 2001. But in 1991 USSR dissolved, and formed as a new country, formed as Russia, and it incident gives freedom to the Cold War tensions and war like Third World tensions. But another type of tensions are there happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Eastern European countries. But finally, Cold War tensions, we got freedom from the Cold War tensions. Another important incident which was happened in Russia in Chernobyl accident, because of accident happened in Chernobyl nuclear plant. Because of this accident, a large number of people died. So it gives to the it helped to merge anti-war concerns with concerns of environmental protection. So it gives boosting to the movements who are started against anti-war, against wars, and who started for the favorable of environmental protection. Okay, like this, so social movements are started. Okay, children, up to now we have recaptured today's class. Then I will go for evaluation. So here 5 questions are there. Children, I will read once the questions. Read the famous speech, I have a dream, and write your opinion. So children, all of you read the speech which is given by Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream, and write your opinion, write your comment on this speech. Second one, what are the reasons for the civil disobedience movement in USSA? Okay, children, write the reasons why they started disobedience movement in USSA. Third one, write few points about human rights movements in USSR. Okay. Okay, why the Americans refused to send their children to Vietnam to work in army? Okay, here you have to write reasons. What is the need of START and justify your opinion? Children, what is the need of START agreement and write your own opinion? Okay, children.